Welcome to my first vegetable garden. This is episode 8 of 9 of growing tomatoes and peppers from start to finish. Today I'm going to show you how to stake your indeterminate tomatoes, how to prune out suckers, talk about how many production stems you might want, and also talk about side dressing. It's a little bit early for side dressing, but I want to show you now so you know how to do it when your tomato plants get to the right size. Also going to show you the peppers that were damaged by the snails and slugs way back in the beginning. They're doing really well, and I'm going to just show you how I set them up, really prune out a little bit of the bottom and get them ready for the rest of the season. The peppers and tomatoes that you just saw right in here are the ones that you saw at the end of video 7. They're just doing really well. Wanted to have you just get a quick look at how well they're doing. Again, the determinate varieties will get to a set height. The tomatoes are producing, they're going to die out, but we're going to go and talk about how we take care of the peppers for the rest of the season and how we take care of the indeterminate tomatoes. Here are the peppers that were really eaten up by the slugs, and they've been taken care of. I've got rid of the slugs with iron phosphate. The plants are doing really well. I'm going to weed this area out, prune off, I don't know, an inch or two from the bottom of the pepper plants, and that's pretty much it. That's all I'm going to do for this season. You don't have to do a whole lot for peppers. We got them established, planted them with some organic fertilizer. I'll give them maybe a little bit of a liquid fertilizer today. But after that, just let them grow. Let them do their thing. They're set up. They're going to do fine for the rest of the season. We might have to stake them lightly. I'll show you a video if I need to do that. It took about a half an hour to pull out the weeds. And I took about 2 inches, maybe 3 inches of the bottom leaves of the pepper plants off the plant. I didn't take any big branches or stems or anything like that. I just broke the leaves off. And that's just to allow the air to circulate under there, and those lower leaves are a little bit easier for bugs and snails and slugs and stuff to get onto. I'm also going to put down some iron phosphate. That's what's keeping the snails and slugs away. I did have to stake up one of the peppers, and I just wanted to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how to do tomato plants too right after this. Just put the stake an inch is a little bit close. That's a little bit close to the stem, maybe 2 inches out. This way, when the stake goes in, you don't break off any big part of the root system. Out here you break off smaller branches, which is perfectly fine. And then when you tie it, just tie it loosely so that you're not smashing the stem against the stake. And also try and get 2 or more stems into the loop of the string that you're using. This way, when these get heavier, you're not just supporting the entire pepper plant with one of the stems like that, because they break off pretty easily. This way I have 2 in there, and that's just going to provide more support for the plant when it gets bigger. And as it grows, of course, I'll put another string up here, loosely tie it, and work my way up the stake as needed. A couple more back there. Those are the same variety of pepper right there. That's banana pepper, so I figured they're going to need to be staked down the line. And this is just the rest of the peppers, and I just wanted to show you how much I took off from the bottoms in case you want to do the same thing. Back behind there are some forget-me-nots. I'm going to let those grow and bloom. And then another thing that I found in here that I'm going to leave is one that's a tomato plant, and that's actually a currant variety. So that doesn't get really big. I'm going to prune it so it stays low. But I found some dill. So I'm going to let the dill grow up around the pepper. This way I'll have an herb that I didn't have to worry about planting anywhere else. It'll do perfectly fine in there. I'm going to show you how to prune your indeterminate tomatoes, how to identify and remove a sucker, how to tie it to a stake. And although this plant is not ready for side dressing, you want to side dress when your plant's maybe about 4 feet tall and it has small fruit on there. So it's when the first fruit show up. That's when you'll do the side dress. But I want to show it to you now because I'm not going to do a specific video on it. The 9th video, the final video for this series, is really going to be about harvesting the tomatoes from your plants. To find a sucker, now suckers are not necessarily something that suck the life out of your plant or need to be removed. The reason you remove some of them is so that you can manage the size of the plant, manage it for diseases, and it's really kind of an artistic choice you have on how you want to prune it, how many stems you want to leave, but let me explain it. So you have your main tomato, roots in the ground, stem comes up, here's a leaf joint, the stem continues to go up. Right here in the V section is a tomato that's going to grow leaves and flowers. That's a sucker. That will become a full production stem. I don't want this one right here. I don't want it growing out the side of my tomato out this way. So I'm going to remove that. I also like to remove a good amount, maybe 10 inches of leaves from the bottom, so that if any disease spores are in the ground, they don't splash up. So I'm going to take this one today. Now, I like to leave a good chunk of the tomato plant, like I wouldn't prune it all the way up to here just to make the gap. So as this grows up, I'll come back and I'll remove, this leaf here. Now, as you come up to here, you see the main stem continues this way. These are some flowers, another leaf, and it keeps continuing. Here's a leaf right here. Here's the main stem going up along where the knife is. This is another sucker. I'm going to keep this. So I'm letting this tomato branch into 2 production stalks, or 2 stems, and I'm going to let these stems continue to grow. And each stem, the main stem, will continue to do a couple of leaves, some flowers, a couple of leaves, some flowers, and it will continue as it grows up. This will do the same thing. You can see right in here some flowers are forming, and it will continue to grow. I will stake one of them up here, and I just broke off the flowers. Too bad. How unfortunate. Fortunately, more going to flower up here. Now, right in this joint, here's the main part of the stem going up right where the knife is, another leaf coming out, and this is a sucker. I'm not going to keep that in there. And what happens is, if you don't remove the suckers, you just start getting all these production stems, which is great, but the plant becomes massive, it's a lot of leaves, and you can get diseases more easily. Now, you can keep as many as you want. Again, how you prune is sort of an artistic thing. With the brandywines, you want to have more stems than a single stem. So I'll let this grow for a while, then I'll probably let another one branch off. Now, to tie this to a stake, I use a cage to really, support it around the initial growth. But then you're going to need a stake, because these are indeterminate varieties, and they're going to keep growing until either disease takes your plant or cold weather comes. So to tie it back, all you're doing is tying it to a stake. You want to leave a nice ring. Let me tie it and I'll show it to you. You want to leave enough space, just make a ring around the stake and the stem so that there's a nice gap. You don't want to tie the stem completely to the stake, because then your stem won't have room to grow. Something loose just like that, and you'll just work the main stem all the way up the post. Now, for something that's out here like this, you can still use the stem, just use a larger piece of string, and this way you don't need a stake for every single stem that you let grow. Just make a bigger loop. And as this stem gets bigger, the weight will pull it outward, and this stake will support it. You also want to drop it right above a leaf. If you can see, here's the leaf. This way the string doesn't slide down the stem. So I want it to be right there. So when this gets bigger, it'll be supported by the stake. This will be supported, and I'll just do that all the way up. So that's the basic staking. Also, when you put the stake in, this is about 1 inch close. That's a little bit close, but I knew that the plant would survive. You want to be about 2-3 inches out. That's just so you don't accidentally shear off a lot of the roots along the stem too close to the stem. If you damage roots out here, that's fine, though the plant will be perfectly fine. Now, the next thing is the side dressing. Don't put any fertilizer right by the stem. Leave it, 4-6 inches out and away. And all I do really, you can use an organic fertilizer, you can use a processed fertilizer. This is about a 5-5-5. It's your choice of what you want to use. And you're just going to take 1 tablespoon and sprinkle it like in a 4-inch ring around the tomato. And you can do the same thing for peppers. Peppers, you don't have to fertilize that much, so if you want to skip a side dressing for peppers, that's perfectly fine. But again, that's up to you. And the reason you have options is because I don't know how fertile your soil is or what your plant might need, but that's up to you. So the side dressing would occur when these plants are about 4 feet tall. For me, that's usually beginning, middle of July. The fruit is set. It might be about this size. Give it a side dressing, don't worry about it. The other thing you can side dress with is lime. Lime is important because it helps provide calcium to your plant. Most soils have lime, but tomato plants can get blossom end rot, and you're going to do the same thing. 1 tablespoon, 4 or 6 inches away from the stem, and just sprinkle it in. Tomatoes and peppers can get blossom end rot. That's when the bottom of the tomato or the pepper begins to brown, and it's because the plant's having trouble getting calcium. Either it's a watering issue or it's a calcium issue, but putting this much lime around it isn't going to harm the plant, isn't going to harm the soil, and it does supply the calcium your plant would need. Now when you side dress, you're putting everything on top, so as it rains, a little bit will drip in slowly and it will take care of your plant, for the rest of the season. Now sometimes I still give this a half-strength liquid fertilizer if I'm using a chemical fertilizer like Miracle-Gro. And I just want to clarify, Miracle-Gro has a 24% nitrogen rating on it. It's like a 24, 14 fertilizer. That's pretty high. You don't want a lot of nitrogen with your tomatoes and peppers once they were transplanted and growing. You want to really keep that fertilizer NP&K around the 5.55, or in some cases you can have a higher phosphorus, but we'll talk about that in another video. So try and get your fertilizer close to a 5.55, somewhere between 5.55, 10 is fine. And the reason I throw these numbers out is because people worry, is this too much, is this too little? The plants don't care that much. Just try and keep it low. So if you do a half strength, quarter strength, something like Miracle-Gro, you bring that nitrogen way down. If you use something like Job's Organic, which I use, that's around a 4.44, 5.55 furnish NPK, give or take 1. You can feed your plant that at full strength. I hope that makes sense. If you want to give them a liquid feed, every 10 or 14 days is fine, once a month is fine. It just depends on what you want to do. But if you've been taking care of your plant from the beginning, you're not going to need much fertilizer really past the side dress. Spraying for diseases, taking care of insects, I've talked about in this series and other videos, and basically you just want to have a strategy, for the rest of the season. Take a look at your tomato plants, as often as you can. Look for signs of pests, look for signs of disease. And when it comes to spraying, you want to be spraying every 7 to 14 days. It really depends on what kind of diseases come into your area, what kind of insects are around, how much it rains. I like for the antifungals to slow disease, to stop disease, is baking soda. Baking soda is what I use first. And then as my season progresses and it really gets into the early blight season, I switch over to Serenade. That seems to work a little bit better than baking soda. I may switch back and forth, but it's really up to you. Is pick out a couple of products that you want to use for an antifungal on your plants. Pick out something you want to use for insect control. I use neem oil. I also use 7 Dust in a very controlled and specific way. A lot of people don't like that, but you can use any product to take care of your plants that you want. Just use it in a way that you respect the environment, take care of any stray spraying, stray dusting, and your garden will be really, really healthy. Here's a look at my garden from the other side. These are my zucchini, my cucumber plants. I'll be doing videos on those. This is the rest of my indeterminate tomatoes. So what a production stem is, which is basically a sucker. You can prune several suckers off of your plants. You can prune 0 off your plants. It's really up to you. The reason you prune, and the reason I want to stress, is because you're controlling the size of the plant. You're taking out some of the vegetation, you're making the plant less dense, and that really helps with managing pests and disease. Now, that's going to vary in everybody's location. If you don't have pests or disease, just let your tomato plant go. But most of us aren't blessed with that type of gardening zone. There's always something that comes in. If it's not one disease, it's another. If it's not one pest, it's something else. So go ahead, prune your tomato plants to a single stem, to a double stem, to a triple stem. Just experiment. You know what the suckers are now. You know what to remove. You have some idea of how to control the size of the plant and see what you like to do. Hope you enjoyed this video and it gives you enough information to really take care of your tomatoes and peppers through the rest of the season, and when we come back, we'll be into harvesting. Please check out my blog at www.therustedgarden.blogspot.com and also check out my YouTube videos. Thanks.